thing. Someone else had also asked if they wanted to look through the questionnaire that we'd shown last time. They were like, how do you analyze that? So that's an interesting thing. It's a little bit outside the scope of what we're looking at today, but I have one slide prepared on the kind of analysis that you can get from Likert scale questions. It's actually really simple. So we'll just do a little bit of that before we dive in. So over to you, Saloni.
Thanks, Ranj. Okay, so for a quick recap, we are now in the fourth session. In the last three sessions have looked at, what is social research, what are the elements of social research, why do social research, what are the different sampling techniques and research methodologies that one could employ to answer a particular question, the difference between an aim and an objective, how to design questions that are smart, which means, what does smart mean? Do you guys remember? Does anyone remember what smart means?
Study design.
Yes, but what does the acronym SMART stand for?
Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound.
Yes, correct. So yeah, how our research has to be precise, substantiated with evidence, ambitious, but also have very realistic goals and achievable. One should base it based on the skill sets and resources that one has at their disposal, and also with certain timelines and buffer. So that's the first thing we spoke about. Ranjani also gave a recap of her session about sampling strategies. Then we spoke about data collection, how to collect information, what to do with data that we cannot ask directly, sensitive questions, can we derive that data, can we triangulate it? These were the kind of things we spoke about. We spoke about the different measurement scales. I hope you know what a Likert scale is. Can someone tell me what a Likert scale is? What is a Likert scale? Yes, it's a scale. What does it do? Yes, it measures degrees of a response, correct. So yeah, so like Aliana mentioned, it's a measurement of degrees. It could be, on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 7, depending on the question. There's also binary, which is yes and no. There's continuous, which is a continuous measure, numerical measure. We spoke about priming and bias, facts versus perceptions. Then we spoke about how to ask questions, the kind of questions we can ask. How do we ask them? They should be framed in a way that respondents understand, have knowledge of, and are willing to answer those questions. There has to be consistency in interpretation of questions. We spoke about why pilot surveys are important. And then we focused on research ethics, and a lot of very cool points came up, which you guys brought forth about consent, respect, confidentiality, clarifying the aims of the study, asking non-leading questions, what is interview fatigue, and how to remain neutral, how to pick the right interviewer, how to reduce bias towards the interviewer, etc., etc. Now, one of the feedbacks that we got was we focused a lot on trophy hunting, but perhaps we could spend this time to maybe discuss this particular dilemma that a lot of us might have in the field, where you're going to a family who has lost their livestock to, say, a predator. It could be livestock in lower altitudes. It could even be human life. So how do you ask questions sensitively and sensibly at that point? That was one of the questions that we got in the feedback. So do you guys have any thoughts about that? How do you ask sensitive questions or questions at a sensitive time in a person's life? Do you ask them at all? And if so, how would you ask them if you need that information? So yeah, over to you guys. If there is anything you want to add to the last question, then please do. How does one ask questions to an interviewee at a sensitive time? Okay, while you think about it, I'll. Okay, Aliana says, if you have to ask, you would have to be very careful with phrasing and pushing too hard, etc. Yes, that's very important. I think we are all sort of mindful of, how awkward it is for the person. Helena says establishing trust is important. That is very true. Trust, some sort of a relationship before you dive into very sensitive questions is important. And here by sensitive, I don't mean, stuff that's quote unquote illegal for people to do, like wildlife trade or something. I'm talking about times when, say, a family is grieving or has lost its livestock, has, a snow leopard has entered a corral and killed 100 sheep. How do you then go and ask questions about how they feel towards the snow leopard? And is it even ethical to do so? So I personally find it really hard to, sit down with a pen and paper and have that kind of a very clinical, a conversation with somebody who's just lost their livestock, especially if they are distressed. So the way I would perhaps go about it is, just do a few informal interactions, test the waters, see how the person's feeling, ask them if they are okay talking to you. Sometimes they might not want to talk to you at all. And in which case, perhaps it's best to leave them alone and come back another time after a while, after some time has passed. That's one thing. There are some people who are open to talking about it, and then that has to be approached very gently. It has to be kind of framed in a way that doesn't vilify either them or the animal. That's very important, because if you try to portray the predator as a villain in your questions, then you are likely to get biased responses, and you might do that to align with their kind of sentiments, and that might not be a good idea according to me. Heather says, approach it in a manner where you're willing to learn instead of telling them your ideas. Certainly, they will be more educated than us. Nilofer says, can ask indirectly about the sensitive issue. Yes, could you give us an example, Nilofer, of what you mean by indirectly?
Yeah, thanks so much, Saloni. I was just thinking maybe if we are talking about a very sensitive issue, for example, illegal activities, can we, I don't know, just as an example, just ask indirect questions to reach out the main purpose of the question instead of go to the local communities or go to a very specific person and first of all without any background ask that, okay, how much do you earn from poaching, or are you poaching here, or whatever. I don't know if I can explain it really clear to you, but I was thinking maybe as an example we can start talking about different things instead of going straight to the target questions we are searching for.
Right. Yes, that's absolutely correct. If we are talking about, like I said, sensitive issues which are illegal in nature or something that makes people uncomfortable, yes, this is a good strategy to employ. But what I meant by sensitive issues is when a person has lost their livestock, or when a person is grieving due to the death of their loved one to a predator, like say a bear, then how do you go and talk to them, So like Heather mentioned, Nilofer brought out some good points about generally being mindful. But, it's important that we don't assume that we know better. Also not over-promising when you're going there, because, you might feel like you want to help them. And it's absolutely fine to help people, but don't overpromise we are not going to be able to deliver. So they might, the moment you go there, they might think that you're representing some sort of a welfare organization or a government organization that's there to help them through this difficult time. So be careful about how you project yourself. I think that's very important. Ranj, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I think this is quite a sensitive and difficult topic. No, Saloni, I was also thinking about that time you had. Hello, can you hear
Yeah,
me?
yeah, now I can hear you.
Sorry, my internet is really patchy. It's dropping a bit. So I remember, when you had when you had visited that lady in Ladakh, where she had lost her uh, I think, was it a dog to a snow
Dog.
leopard
Yeah,
attack? And I mean, I don't even know if there was any way one could ask her
yeah,
questions, forget that time, but even going back later and things like that. So I think that the points that most of you brought up is all true. And I think in addition to that, I would also add that sometimes we just can't get these interviews. Sometimes it's just too sensitive. Sometimes it's not possible. So I think instead of pushing, we just step away and say that it's not possible to get that information. I just like to add that, because I think that people's emotions, people's situations, people's consent often is much more important than us getting data.
yeah. I absolutely agree with that. Does anyone have anything else to say? Not promise, but you may show sympathies or will try to do best if we are going as conservation. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, if it is within your capacity to help and, express your sympathies and, promise them something that you can give, of course, it's a great thing. But a lot of times, you might be a student and you just probably want to, know what's happening, but you don't have the means to provide them with anything. So then that's a bit of a dilemma. So, you know, have to be a bit careful. Aliana says being able to read a person or situation, emotions, non-verbal cues would be very important. Knowing when to ask questions and continue or back off. Yeah, that is true. That's sort of what Ranjini also said. How are we doing on time, Raj? Do you want to dive into your thing?
Yeah, sure. I think we would. Yeah, I think we're okay with time. We have about 3 more minutes, and we can, if
Okay.
people want to discuss
If
a
they,
bit more, we can dive in.
okay. Just let me know when you want me to
Yeah.
talk. Iftikhar says most of the places in and around Ladakh where hunting is totally illegal, people may avoid answering questions of hunting. What would be a good approach for that? Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean because I have really struggled with this in especially in Kargil, I think, and I mean that's a very long discussion which we can have at length some other time, but. Like Nilofer mentioned, asking indirectly, asking what people do instead of what they do, what an individual does might be a better way, or what people did in the past. And then you can sort of gently move into, okay, what's the situation at present? But asking very pointed questions to something that's very illegal, people are not going to be open about it. Unless you've established that level of intimacy and rapport with them where, they're really opening up about their life to you, which has also happened when I used to do interviews, but it took much longer. And therefore, the method that you use to collect this data is very important. If you go in with like a structured questionnaire, it might not work. So, doing more unstructured sort of interviews, open ended questions are probably better for this kind of information. So, yeah.
So I just want to add, sorry, huh, I suddenly got ejected from the
Oh,
call.
oh,
So I just
okay.
wanted to add also to this asking difficult questions. One is directly asking. The second thing, of course, is if it's a very complicated situation, we tune our questions so that we don't get personal responses, but rather we're looking at the larger patterns, right? The third thing that I want to add is like what Saloni had mentioned last class. There are methods which many people have worked with, that look at answering delicate questions like hunting, like poaching, which is not emotion. So the thing is, I guess we can differentiate sensitive. There are different kinds of sensitive questions, right? So one type of sensitive questions might be more emotional. So that maybe with time, people are more willing to answer personal things. Other questions, things that deal with things like illegal hunting, poaching, all of that, which can get people into trouble, or they might not be comfortable talking about, that kind of questions, time is probably not going to help, right? So what those, one of course is looking at larger patterns rather than individual based responses. The other option for that is there are methods. So one, like what Saloni had said, no, you give a person a sheet and they don't know what's on the other side, which paper we've shared actually in the previous session. So that's one method of doing it. There's another cool method which I found, which is a paper we can also share, about fishermen in the UK, where they were asking them questions and they'd roll a dice. So based on, so supposing they got like, I think it was either 1, 2, or 3, for example, if they got these numbers, they had to tell the truth. If they got 3, 4, 5, 6, they lie. If they got something else, they can choose either to lie or tell the truth, except we don't know what these numbers are. We just know the probability of them telling the truth or the probability of them lying. So when they're giving us the response, we don't know whether they're lying or not. So based on these probabilities, they have calculated the probability of this being the truth or not. So I found that a very interesting method and a really interesting paper looking at illegality. Of course, that is also a bit more complex when it comes to the methods analysis, but it's interesting to look at other papers that look at these, and there's lots of innovative methods people are coming up with that deal with probabilities that help with answering these questions. Sorry, just to add to the conversation.
Cool. I think that's quite a lengthy recap. Do you want to move on to the analysis bit?
Yeah, cool. I can. So I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it starts here. So I'm going to start very quickly. Can you guys see?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to start very quickly with the Likert scale, Likert scale that we were talking about, because this we're specifically looking at because people wrote it in the feedback form. So this is a little research study that I had done with a group of other people, where we were looking at early career researchers' involvement in the science policy interface. Okay, so on the left, on the x-axis, these are the questions. We asked them some 19 questions. Okay, so it's not questions, it's more Likert scale responses, right? But if you remember in the last class, we had said when you ask Likert scale, because people are more likely to agree to questions because of agreement bias and because they want to be liked, it's sometimes better to phrase it as questions. Right. So I'll give you an example of one of the questions we had asked. We said, how many opportunities for ECRs to engage with policymakers are you aware of? Okay. So the initial draft, for example, this statement was, I am aware of many opportunities to engage with policymakers. And then we had a scale from 1 to 5 that said agree or disagree. Right. So they could decide. But here, when we were reworking it and we realized questions work better, we said, how many opportunities are you aware of? So then the response to that was many opportunities. So it's still a scale of 1 to 5. It's many opportunities, some opportunities, few opportunities, no opportunities, and not sure. So not sure was the middle response. But if you notice, it's the same response we're going to get as if we had phrased it, I am aware of many opportunities. Response meaning it's the same question we're asking. But through this method, we hope that people are more likely to answer without being agreeing. They'll be like, I'm aware of many opportunities, just saying yes or no. But here, if you're aware of how many opportunities are you aware of, you kind of have to stop and ask that question and respond accordingly, right? So that's just a little bit breakdown of the Likert scale. How we had gone about changing the statements to questions. Now, how do you analyze this data? So now what you're going to get is, say, for this questionnaire that I'm talking about, we had about like 250 responses. So what we did, so that means you have 250 responses for each of these. So essentially what this is looking at, if you look at the yellow dots, that's the mean, okay? And if you look at the corners, that's the interval, the standard deviation. And the square, the green square, is the median, right? So essentially from 1 to 5, what we get is you get the mean of each of the response, you get the standard deviation and of each of these. So that way you kind of know what is the average responses that you're getting in from people. So that's one easy way of that's basically what you can do with a Likert scale. You just know the mean of the responses of what people have said in. So again, if we look at the first one, how many opportunities are you aware of ECRs to engage? So that is 2. Over here, the scale of 2 is like, so it's like 0 is 1, so 2 is the middle. So 2 is like few opportunities. So most people were aware of only few opportunities, with the range being no opportunity to some opportunity. So it was kind of in the middle. Nobody knew of those. So this is one example of a way of analyzing this Likert scale data. Now, if like with a specific example of the conservation education questionnaire. So the thing about conservation education that was interesting is that you give them the questionnaire before an intervention, and you give them the questionnaire after an intervention using the Likert scale. So then what happens is you compare the scores. So then you do the mean and the median for before, when people, before they went into like say a nature camp or a class or whatever your intervention is, you have a questionnaire with the Likert scale things before. Then you have responses with like mean, median, all of that. And then after that, after the intervention, you give them the exact same questionnaire. And then you again analyze the Likert scale questions. And then there are many tests. Like for example, there's a McNamara test, which is a pre-test and post-test score, which is specifically looking at comparing what happens before the intervention and what happens after the intervention to see if there are changes in responses. Is that so? That's just I'm just checking the chat to see. Okay, so that's the very quickly. That's how one can go about answering the Likert scale. Basically, at a very simple level, look at the mean, median, mode. Before, look at it after, and compare between before and after if there's an intervention. Otherwise, if there's no intervention, it's a one-time thing, you can just look at the mean and the median.